Welcome to Hewtown, Alabama. My name's Ken McFarland. I am your host for Rings, Gears, and Opinions, and we got a very special guest that's been a friend of mine for a long time here today, and he's a great storyteller, and he's done a lot of unique things in his life, and I'm just really excited about it. So I hope you enjoy it today, and welcome Robert Wells, better known as Paddlefoot. Hello, Paddlefoot.
How y'all doing?
We're good. Glad to have you today.
Glad to be here.
We're good.
That means I didn't run out of tomorrows.
That's correct, yeah. Hopefully you got many more left.
Me too.
Everybody wants to know, you went by Robert Wells for many years, but then the name Paddlefoot came along. Share with us today how that name came about.
Well, I was working at U.S. Steel, and I was driving hobby cars, and the guys I worked with bring their families to the fairgrounds to watch me race on Sunday. And so they was all into it. And one day I blew an engine in my car, and it blew the oil all over my white tight blue jeans that I wore while I was driving race cars.
Okay.
So rather than throw them away, I wore them to work. And of course, when I put on those metatarsal shoes and me with skinny legs.
Yeah, how much did you weigh back then, Paddlefoot?
Somewhere around 110, 112.
How much you think those shoes weighed?
They weighed probably 5 pounds.
Go ahead.
But anyhow, went in and checked on a weighman, checked on the lifts that he weighed up of steel. And then I turned around to walk out of his office back into my office. His name was Joe Vines.
Okay.
I started walking back into my office from his office, and as I walked out of his office, he started dying of laughing. And I said, "What are you laughing about?" He said, Day. He said, "You with them skinny legs and them big old feet, we ought to just call you Paddlefoot."
How about that?
And so he gets on the PA system, and he broadcasted to all the rest of the employees in that mill that from now on my name was Paddlefoot. And so they made a big joke out of it. Kind of irritated me at first because
Yeah, so you wasn't feeling real good about it at the time.
no, I wasn't.
Okay.
And then them and their families came to the fairgrounds on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them goes down, and Bob Harmon was the announcer at BIR at that time. And they go down and tell Bob Harmon, "Hey, his name's not Robert Wells, it's Paddlefoot Wells." Well, Bob Harmon thought that was real funny.
Yeah.
So he brought it up every time he could. But then I was kind of irritated about it. But after that, well, I noticed that after the race was over and everybody came down to the infield to get autographs and whatever, talk to the people they knew and all of that, well, I was just covered up with
Fans.
kids.
Yeah, okay.
Kids.
Yeah.
Those kids, kind of associated me with a cartoon character.
That's correct, yeah.
They wanted to see what I looked like, I guess. Because, well, one time later on, years after that, when I was running with Red, Bobby, and all the rest of them, Red said, "I always know where you're parked after the races." And I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "I just look around in the pits and see where it looks like they're having kindergarten."
How about that, isn't it? But that's a great privilege to have that impact on the kids at that time, you know.
Yeah, the name was doing it.
Yeah, but it was. But then you're running good, and your name's being called. Bob and them's getting the opportunity to call you that and stuff, and everybody loves to see a child have a good time, especially at the racetrack, and so that's really cool. So that made you get a little softer about it, and you finally accepted the name.
Oh yeah,
Paddlefoot.
I was kind of proud of it after.
Well, that's right.
After I saw the kids.
Yeah.
Liked it.
That's pretty good.
Well, I was okay with it after that.
Yeah. So you're from Pleasant Grove, Alabama.
Yes, sir.
Family moved there many years ago, and your grandfather came here to work in the steel mill.
Sure did.
Yeah. All right.
They brought him here to start up the blast furnaces
Yeah.
in Inslee
Yeah.
and put him over the blast furnaces in Inslee back in early 1900s. I'm talking about 1900 something.
Man, that's amazing.
And so then our family, Daddy was the oldest out of about 8 kids, and I'm the 6th oldest out of his 8 kids.
Is that right?
So they believed in having a lot of youngins.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, it's neat that you were born. You've brought a lot of excitement to people's lives, and you made a lot of good friendships through the years. So I know a lot of people are glad that
My
you're here.
friendships is what makes the most to me.
There's
Because, after you get my age, that's your main thing.
Yeah,
is,
that's correct.
is having everywhere you go, you still friend.
Well, tell me about the first times you started putting your hands on a race car and you started to fall in love with the sport. Who was
Well,
around and
I was Charles Anthony, Charlie. Well, he'd come back out of service, was working for a place in Inslee, a Ford dealer named Bob Arnold Ford.
really?
That'll ring a bell for some people,
Yeah.
if they're still alive.
Yeah.
But he wanted to build a drag car, so he got an old 34 Ford 2-door sedan and took the top out of it and put a flathead motor in it that he built and put big tires on the back and a tow bar on the front, and we drug that thing all over the place.
And he was driving it also, or
Yeah, he was driving it,
yeah.
and Bo might have drove it some, but I think Charlie was the main one to drive it.
Okay.
And then he decided to go to stock cars, and when he did, well, I was helping him do that. And
Had you been to many races at that time? Any oval races at all?
oh yeah,
Oh, you had been. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you were already a fan of oval track racing.
oh yeah.
All right. Good.
And about that time we get out of high school, and then I'm excited over helping them, and Bo's driving the stock car, not
Okay.
Charlie.
Okay.
And then on the way to work one day, well, Bo's brother-in-law, I was stopped getting gas. Bo's brother-in-law, Clarence Elrod,
Mhm.
he said, "When you gonna start driving race cars?" And I said, "I sure would like to." And he said, "Well, let me tell you, my brother-in-law over in Wilkes has got a race car that it's ready to just crank it up and hit the track. And I can get that car from him for $150. He said, "I'll even pay half of it.
Wow. You had a business partner, a race partner
if
right off the bat.
if you'll pay the other half."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay." So I gave him $75, went on to work. He said,
You don't even know what you're buying at this time. You just know that Paddlefoot's getting him a race car.
I just knew it was going to be a race car. It was ready to go. And I was, and that's all I needed to know at the
That's right,
time,
all right.
you know? So he said, "I'm going to go get that car and bring it over here and park it beside the service station, outside.
Mhm.
When you're on the way home from work tonight at 11 o'clock, well, it'll be sitting here and you can see it." I said, "Oh, well, good." So I get off of work, I come back, and I'm all excited. I pull up to the front of it and leave my headlights on. And I get out and I look, and it's got a roll bar cage and all that stuff on it. And I look around, and the whole front end, hood, grill, everything, was
That was common back in the day, I
cut
guess.
off of it. Because,
Yeah.
that was common. And so everything looked like it met my approval. And then I got to thinking, well, what the heck kind of car is this? So I got my cigarette lighter, and I leaned over in there and lit it, and I could see Cadillac wrote on the valve covers.
Oh man,
So
big.
my first race car was a Cadillac.
What year was this car?
Oh, it was a 47 or something.
Oh, big heavy car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't last till the
All right.
cows come home. It was gone.
Tell me about this. So you get in this car, and it's now in your possession, and you're getting ready to go race it, right? You're getting it all prepped and stuff like that. Did you do much preparation to it, or did you take his words and it's ready to go?
Yeah. It had a tow bar on it.
All right.
That got me to the track.
All
Man.
right. So
And
so where do you go race it at, and who do you take with you?
I went to Midfield. I carried a friend of mine, Ronnie Rickles. Well, he went with me, and we went over there. And of course, I think I finished probably. If I didn't finish last, I probably wasn't very far from last. But I never had been in one before.
So what did you think when you're out there and you're getting in this big car? Does it feel like a race car to you, or does it feel like a jalopy? I mean,
The noise made it feel like a race car
okay, all right. So
because it was open exhaust.
I got you.
The noise made your heart beat twice as fast.
So you were excited.
I was excited.
Okay.
My eyelids were jumping up and down like window shades.
All right.
But it was a new experience, and yeah, I was excited. I didn't do worth a hoot, but
All right. And how long do you live? How long is this car involved with you in your racing career?
oh, that car probably didn't last 2 months till I was hunting something faster and
All right.
all that.
So
I just slowly moved on up through hobby cars.
So where do you find car number 2? Where does it come from?
Gosh, I don't remember. I think I built it.
Okay. Yeah. I think it was a Chevrolet or something lighter.
Yeah,
and-
Chevrolet.
Okay.
And then I drove a Ford Coupe for Joe McCoy, and
Now, how do you meet Joe? Share that part with me.
I don't remember how I met him, but he was a truck driver,
Okay.
and he lived in town, and
Now, where's in town mean? Where's that at?
at Birmingham.
Oh, okay. So lived in a big city, not Pleasant
Yeah.
Grove. All right.
And somehow or another, I got tied in with him to drive his race car, and won my first feature in it.
Really? And
Yeah.
and
at-
what track is
at
this
the
at?
Fairground.
At the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
Now
It's
we're
a
asphalt.
40 Ford Coupe.
We're asphalt at this time, right? The track, or is it?
Let me see. When I first started running it, it was dirt.
Okay.
But if I ain't mistaken, it was asphalt
Okay. So
when I won in that 40 Ford.
okay. Now is he there that night with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Big celebration.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And
And, well, it was in the daytime.
okay. Really?
It was in the daytime, yeah. And I knew that we was running an illegal motor.
Okay.
It was 3 3/8 by 4 1/8. I remember that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, is this?
which was a Mercury crank and a flathead that was bored out.
Ah. Okay.
And they, at the time, everybody else had 30 minutes to protest you. That's the longest 30 minutes of my life.
Nobody protested.
And nobody protested. And I sure was tickled, because they'd have got me heads up, because all it had done was pop a head on
Sure. So how long do we drive this car?
it. I drove it for a short period of time. Wrecked it bad one time.
Tell me about your accident. Tell me about that.
Well, trying to think of the guy's name now. Married my wife's cousin. He blowed a radiator hose, which
And
was common back in them.
And where you're at? What racetrack?
BIR.
Are you back at BIR? All right.
And and I was right behind him, and he blowed a radiator hose. Well, me and him both spun,
Mm-hmm.
and then somebody dug into the pasture side of me and pushed the roll bar roll bars that was in the pasture side all the way over to the gear shift lever. That's how
Wow.
hard I was hit.
Luckily, it was on the passenger side.
Yeah,
Yeah, no doubt.
yeah. And there's a little story behind that too. I've when I was building that car, I carried it to my house and built it for Joe.
Okay.
All right. And when I was building it, decided that you need roll bar door bars in the pasture side too. So I put them in there. Well, there was the guy that was a pit steward at the time when we went for our first race that year. He looked at those bars, and he said, those are not required.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I know that, but I just thought it'd be a good thing for him. So he got a guy, a photographer that was up there all the time named Jim Godwin. Had Jim Godwin Studios or
Really?
something there,
Okay.
5 Points West. Well, he got him over there and took pictures of it. He sent those pictures to NASCAR.
Wow.
And so all cars ought to have these doors. Well, then after I had my wreck,
You really were a believer.
well, he had a bunch more pictures taken and sent to NASCAR. And next year they was required.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but
Well, it had to have some impact. Like you said, you were definitely safer in it because
Yeah.
they were there.
yeah, and I built that car in my front yard, and it had 2 pine trees that was perfectly far enough apart where I could pull that car in between them and put chain cross ties to each pine tree, and laid one across the top to put a block and tackle so I could pull my motor and
Unbelievable.
put my motor in and all
Wow.
of that in amongst a bed of pine straw. But that's the way we did it back
And you were running flatheads at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long do you drive for Joe?
I think just that 1 year.
Okay. And then,
And he never had no kids or anything. It's just him and his wife.
Uh-huh.
And they were good people.
yeah. Did stay friends for a long time after that?
Yeah.
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 And then,
Then all right. So we get moved from the coupe, and we're going to go into the next stage of our racing. And so tell me about car number 3.
all right, that would have to be one that I built for myself.
Okay.
I went with Chevrolets then, and I always liked the number 14.
What was your draw to that?
Well, I tell you what I did. I bought a Hudson Hornet
Yeah.
and run that Hudson Hornet, and fans and everybody loved that car because you could hear it for 3 miles. And
Now, is that a flathead 6-cylinder motor in that car?
yes, 308 cubic inches,
Wow. Okay.
4.5-inch stroke.
Wow. Okay.
And T.D. Houghton that owned the motorcycle shop down there had just he'd won the micro championship out in Oklahoma or somewhere, driving those little micro midgets.
Yeah. Right.
And he was running a flathead Harley Davidson, naturally, being he was a Harley Davidson
Dealer. Yeah.
dealer. And he told me one day, he said, Paddlefoot, I can show you how to make that Hudson run.
Now, how do you become friends with Mr. Houghton?
I knew him already.
And he was around the racetrack a lot, and like I
Yeah.
said, loved the micros and all that stuff. So he was just a friend to a lot of
Yeah.
racers and things of that nature.
Yeah, everybody liked him.
Yeah.
When Allison's, all of them liked him real well. He was just a super nice guy.
Yeah. So okay. So
And-
he sees you and says, I can help you with that
He
flathead.
said, the season's about to the end. He said, you pull that engine out and you bring it down there to my motorcycle shop.
Mhm.
I'll set you up in the back and you tear it down and I'm going to show you what to do. And of course, I sat there for 2 weeks with a grinder, porting and polishing and relieving and
Yeah.
all of that. And then that thing, Billy Jack Gregg was the king back then. He drove a Chevrolet, a 401, I believe, was his number.
Yeah.
Another super nice fella, but the old Hudson didn't handle too well. But I could pull him 3 car lengths on the straightaway.
Is that
That
right?
thing would fly.
So you had pretty good success with this old Hudson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I finally gave up on it and went with the Chevrolets and built a 51 Chevrolet and painted my tow truck and the race car, both of them purple with gold competition stripes down the middle of them, and I might not have won all the races, but I looked better than anybody going and cutting.
I hear that.
You know,
that is
it
good.
was a pretty outfit. I still got pictures of it, matter of fact.
Wow, we need to share those. You did bring some of those, and we'll put them online where everybody can take a look at them. Talk about your dad and your family and how they felt about you and your new racing endeavors. Usually, that comes to be, it can be controversial, can it not?
Yeah. Well, I was 6 out of 8 kids, and my daddy was as strict as anybody you ever saw, and I figured if he found out I was in a race car, I was still living at home, and
Okay.
and when I got the Cadillac,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and so if he found out I was racing, I was going to be in serious trouble. So anyhow, my name is Robert Elliott Wales. All right. I took Robert, changed it to Bob, used my middle name, and that's what I signed in as driver was Bob Elliott.
Okay. Wow.
And so if it came out in the newspaper or anything, he wouldn't know it was me.
Mm-hmm.
And then a fella that worked for him out at US Steel was at Midfield one night and watched races, and I won the race. And so he comes down in the pits, and he sees who I am.
Wow, he recognizes you.
Yeah. And so I didn't really think about it, I guess because I was excited.
Y'all spoke and were cordial and all that stuff, and you
yeah.
never realizing
Yeah.
that this is going to come back and.
I even remember his name, Egghead Lawson.
Is okay.
That's amazing. I remember that stuff, and I can't remember my name sometimes. But anyhow,
So Egghead.
he goes and tells Daddy. Well, Daddy don't say nothing to me. But on Sunday, we racing at the fairgrounds, and Bo Anthony spinned me out.
Oh,
And
your friend.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he'd get a little jealous sometimes.
Okay. Yeah.
But anyhow, he spun me out. So after the races was over, and everybody was coming down into the pits, to see everybody. Well, somebody punched me and said, "Hey, look yonder, that's your daddy coming, isn't it?" Well, needless to say, I was so scared of my daddy
Yeah.
till I could feel my heart beating in my throat. This is the honest truth.
I understand.
My throat was going thum, thum, thum like that. I was panicking, and I just knew he was going to whoop me right there in front of God and everybody, And but he walked over there, and I said, "Hey, Dad, how you doing?" And he didn't crack a smile or nothing. I didn't know what was fixing to come out of his mouth. And he said, "Who was that wrecked you over yonder?" I said, "That was Bo Anthony." He knew Bo.
He knew Bo. Okay, good.
And I said, "That was Bo Anthony." And he said, "Well, I'm going to go over there and whoop his butt,"
Yeah.
And I said, "No, Daddy, please don't go over there and embarrass me now."
Yeah.
I said, "Things like that just happen, And he said, "Let me tell you something." And wiggling that thumb.
Uh-huh.
He said, "Let me tell you something. Y'all's probably running 70 miles an hour out there." And he said, "Anybody wrecks you on purpose running 70 miles an hour, said, they ought to be charged with attempted murder.
He was highly offended.
That was quote unquote what he said. He said he ought to be charged with attempted murder.
Wow.
But anyhow, he didn't embarrass me or nothing there. And he says, so we carried the car back to where we was keeping it at a friend of mine's house.
Right.
Ronald Pierce
Okay.
in Pleasant Grove. And so I go on to the house, and oh my goodness, I hated to walk in that house.
Sure.
And I get in there, and he wanted to know whose race car that was. I said, it's mine. Where'd you get it? I said, I bought it. And he said, well, where are you keeping it? I told him at Ronald Pierce's house. And he said, well, from now on, if you're going to drive that race car, it's going to come down here to the house. And I said, but Daddy, we just got a one-car garage.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's where you park your new car. He kept a new Pontiac all the time.
Right.
Matter of fact, he had a 57 Pontiac Safari.
Did it? Really like the red and white car, huh?
Like, he had a green and white one that came from the factory with 3 2-barrels on it.
Wow. Okay.
But anyhow, he said, I'll move my car outside. Y'all gonna keep that race car up in the garage, and it will not leave this house till I inspect it.
Now, tell me about your dad's mechanical abilities.
He barely knew what a spark plug was.
Oh, so he had no.
But he was going to inspect that car before it ever left to go to a race. From then on.
Tell me about the inspections that he puts on your car. How does that go? What does he do?
Oh, he'd walk around the car and he'd look at something. He had his hands behind him, behind his back. He'd lean over, look at something. He'd say, He'd go look at the A-frames or whatever.
Yeah.
He didn't have no earthly idea what he's looking at. But then he'd say, okay, y'all go with it. But that was just, he still wanted to have the authority.
That's right. Yeah, he wanted to know you to know who he was.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good.
And then he got to be one of my biggest race fans when I got to run late model sports.
Yeah.
He had bought a little Datsun, a new Datsun truck, and he would drive it all the way to Daytona to watch me drive Daytona by himself.
That's a good daddy.
With his suitcase in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
And he'd drive 500 miles down there to watch me race at Daytona.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he had retired and moved to Gunnersville, and by that time, Bobby Allison had told me if I got me an airplane, that I could make 2 races in one day sometimes, like he did.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, I had to go get me an airplane and get my license, but I had a plane after Daddy had retired to Arab.
Okay.
And so
what got him to go to Arab? What was the story behind that?
Because he loved to fish.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And he had built a new home up there right above Gunnersville Dam.
Okay. Wow.
And so he'd come to Huntsville Airport and pick me up.
Yeah.
And drive me over to the Huntsville racetrack.
Yeah.
And I'd drive for whoever I was driving for, whether it was Bobby Ray Jones or whoever.
Uh-huh.
And then he'd drive me back to the airport. I'd jump my airplane at 11 o'clock at night and fly back into Bessemer.
Wow.
And
what kind of plane did you have?
I had a Piper Tri-Pacer.
Okay.
Now, Bobby had a Mooney. It was a low wing. The wings were under the fuselage.
Right.
And mine was a high wing.
Okay.
And we both flew them at the same time.
Yeah.
And I might not ought to tell this, but
I got to hear the ones you ought not to tell. That's the ones I want.
well, in '72, me and Bobby flew our planes, our single engine planes. Now. We flew to Atlanta. Well, at that time, the back straightaway was the front straightaway, and the front straightaway was the back straightaway.
Got you. Flip.
All right. And on the back straightaway at that time was a little airstrip. It was called Bear Creek Airstrip.
Okay.
Don't ask me my name,
Okay.
but it was named Bear Creek Airport.
I got your name down just in case we get in trouble here in a little while.
Yeah. But anyhow, I landed, taxied over there, and parked, and Bobby parked on the other side of me. And we tied our planes down like you're supposed to. In the process of doing that, a twin-engine airplane come idling behind us and past us and poured in on the other side of Bobby. Bobby walks over to where I am. Now, remind you, this is 1972.
Okay, I got you.
They get in a big skirmish in '79. You remember that?
I think I do. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think this guy's name's Kel, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cale Yarber. He said, "Did you see who that was in that twin-engine airplane?" And I said, "No." He said, "It's that daggum Cale Yarber." So even in '72, him and Cale, evidently, they had some words or something. Even at that time.
Yeah, they're strong competitors.
And so as soon as when we flew back to Bessemer that very week, I think Bobby went to looking for him a twin engine, and then he got a nice twin engine.
Did he? Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think he could stand Cale Yarber getting in front of him on the racetrack or in an airplane.
There's a pretty funny story about Kel flying with Junior Johnson. I don't know if any of you guys have heard that story of you, and they flying with a vendor up there, a parts guy, I think, and they're flying into Kel's home airport, and he's telling the guy, "You're a little fast and you're a little high."
I hadn't heard that.
Oh yeah, well he's telling him, he said, "You're a little high and you're a little fast," and he's flying in the co-pilot seat, and Junior's in the back. If I remember correctly, they'd been off on an opening for a parts store, and sure enough, he says they ended up crashing the plane and sliding off the runway, and said he starts hollering, "Junior, get out, this thing's gonna catch on fire." And he said he looked over, Junior was standing over there, said, "Come on over here where I'm at," said, "You won't get hurt."
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah, it's a pretty funny story.
They said that Junior got out of that airplane and beat them to the side of the runway.
That's right. Yeah.
Got away from the airplane before they could get out.
Yeah, they don't.
And it didn't have no back doors. I don't know how old Big Junior done that, but that's the way I heard.
I think they're comparing it to that time when he was in Daytona on the beach, and he flips the car. It's his car flipping, and it's got a picture of Junior standing out there beside it. So
yeah,
Kel said he had talent at doing that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he looked like he was running up the track away from the car, and the car's still flipping.
That's correct.
I believe I saw that.
Well, you had a brother that meant a lot to you, that followed you on some of your racing and things like that.
Yeah.
Let's just tell a little bit about your brother.
Yeah, out of 8 kids, there was 3 of us boys, and my older brother he started preaching when he was 15 years old.
Yeah.
And so at the time I started racing, well, he wanted to see me race, but back then stores didn't even open on Sunday.
Yeah.
And of course you don't remember that, but didn't know stores open on Sunday. And so and a pastor wasn't supposed to be seen nowhere except at the church on Sunday.
Yeah, you can't go to the bar, and you can't go to the racetrack hardly.
Well, it was, it was real strict back in
Sure,
those days.
it was.
But my brother would wait until everybody parked and went in the grandstand, and on Sunday afternoon,
mm-hmm.
and then he would walk in and try to be as non-noticeable as he could, and he'd lean against a wall in a walkway or something like that and peep out and see what races he could watch.
Yeah.
You know? And then as soon as I raced, I was racing hobby cars.
Right.
As soon as I raced, well, he'd turn around and take off back to his car, so none of his parishioners or anybody would see him.
Now tell us your brother's name. What was his name?
Douglas.
Douglas, and he ended up
Yeah.
pastoring for quite a long time.
Yeah, he was a pastor at Pell City Free Will Baptist Church, right offside the freeway up there in Pell City. He was pastor for 32 years, and then he woke up one night and his chest was hurting, and he told his wife, said, "Get dressed, you're gonna have to carry me to the hospital." So she ran up there to get dressed. When she come back, he was dead.
Wow. What age was that?
What age was
yeah,
he?
yeah. Pretty young.
I can't remember what age he was. No, this was in 2007.
Okay.
And the reason I remember that was because I got put in the Hall of Fame that December.
Okay.
And I really, really wanted him to be there. And he died in May of that year, so he wasn't at my Hall of Fame induction. But his kids and grandkids and his wife and everybody was there. So.
Okay. So, all right, we're going to go back to the racing years. So you get to start driving for a guy named Joe Antonoro. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about
Yeah, well, see, when they told me I couldn't drive amateur no more,
Okay.
after I was driving for Howard Gaither now,
Mm-hmm.
well, the next year was 1968, and I never got to even sit down in a race car that year.
Wow.
And because I didn't have
Did that catch you off guard, knowing, I mean, when they told you couldn't race?
Yeah.
So it catches you off guard, and you don't have anything lined up or set up at all for 68.
And then the next year, the season had just started, and Joe Antonoro called me and asked me did I want to come drive his race car. He said, "Ralph Morris can't make it tonight." He said, "Would you like to drive my race car?" I said, "Oh, yes." Well, I had a 65 Corvette,
Yeah.
like this white one sitting over here, but it was blue. Me and my wife got in the car, and we was
And where y'all going to race it at first? Montgomery?
Montgomery.
Okay. Yeah.
We was about 2 miles from the house,
Heading to Montgomery?
headed to Montgomery.
Heading to Montgomery. All right.
And oh, I was excited because that was going to be my first time to get to drive late model sportsman.
Okay.
And a policeman called Paul Tingle pulled me over
In Pleasant Grove.
in Pleasant Grove.
Okay. Your hometown.
Yes,
All right.
where I knew him, he knew me, and the whole 9 yards. And
And he forgot you as a race car driver, I guess, did he?
And I told him, he said, "You're speeding." I said, "Yeah, but Paul," I said, "I got a chance to drive a race car tonight," and I just got excited and got a little over the speed limit. And I'll calm down. I'll drive right and all that. "No, I'm gonna give you a ticket anyhow."
Yeah.
So he did.
He did.
And so went on to Montgomery and got down there, and Joe Antonoro had Jarris Holt was a crew chief on his car.
Yeah, and if the people don't remember, Jarris Holt was a very, very good crew chief.
Yes, he was. I mean, that's when he was first starting out,
Yeah.
but he was smart already.
Right.
And he worked at the National Guard Armory full time in Bessemer. Joe Antonoro was his boss at the
Is that right? Okay.
National Guard Armory.
Okay.
But Jarris was just naturally smart from the get-go, because got down there and got in that car and wound up winning the heat and running third in the feature,
Wow.
and outrunning a bunch of them guys that I always really liked to watch run.
Sure.
You know?
And this is spring of '69. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Spring of '69.
And I was excited about that. And so the next week, Joe called me and asked me did I want to drive his car the rest of the year.
Hmm.
And I said, "I'd love to." But I said, me and Ralph Morris are best of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my wife put him in the back seat of our car and drove him to Fultondale to his wedding.
Oh, okay.
Because he didn't want to have a car over there because his car was already there.
Yeah.
And so I said, me and him have been best of friends forever. And I said, I wouldn't take his ride. He said, well, what if I get it okayed with Ralph? I said, well, what if you get Ralph to call me?
Right.
Because I didn't trust nobody.
That's,
I said, you have Ralph call me and tell me to drive it.
uh-huh.
And so he said, all right. In a little while, Ralph called. He said he had some problems, so that would be a good idea if he drive the car.
Yeah, the thing is, you shared with me earlier, his wife was getting a little tired of him being gone and that kind of thing. So it worked out.
Just the way the Lord planned it, I
I
guess.
guess so. All right. So, yeah.
Because I won a bunch of races.
What number was this car?
44.
44, and he
Blue with white letter.
blue with white letters. All right. And any sponsors on that car? Do you remember?
I can't remember
That's okay.
the sponsors.
Yeah.
I got 8 by 10 pictures of it, all of that at home. But,
Yeah. So,
but anyhow, wound up winning enough races that year in Alabama and Mississippi to get Rookie of the Year in both states.
wow, that's pretty amazing.
And Jackson, I always loved Jackson. First
And-
time I ever pulled on the track, it was my track.
Yeah. Where all did you guys run in? I know you run in Jackson, Mississippi,
Yeah,
Birmingham,
yeah.
Montgomery,
Nashville,
no,
Montgomery, Huntsville.
Huntsville. Okay. So all those tracks back then were NASCAR sanctioned tracks, and you could gain points by
Yes,
running at each one of those tracks.
yes.
So, okay. And for national, do you remember who finished second to you in the state championships back then?
No, I don't think he had no runner-up or
Okay.
whatever.
So you were just a grand champion, and that was the way it was.
Yeah, and they didn't make a big deal out of it then.
Yeah, it's still a big deal.
Yeah.
All right. So you finished the season with Joe, and then did you just drive for Joe that one season?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then Bob Ray Jones called me and wanted me to drive for him.
Okay.
And I said, well, Bob Ray, I'm so happy where I am till I really don't want to leave where I'm at.
Right.
But if you'll build me a car for Daytona for next February
Mm-hmm.
and carry me to Daytona, let me drive Daytona, that's one of my life's ambitions.
That's right.
And I said, if you'll do that, I'll quit Joe, even though I don't want to.
Right.
I'll quit him if you'll build me a Daytona car, and then you start furnishing me a weekly car from then on.
So how many years has Bobby Ray been into racing at this point? 'Cause
Oh,
we know-
he hadn't been in racing, but he hadn't been in late models over a year or two.
But it was building good stuff, and
But,
and you
yeah.
and felt really good about going there and getting a chance to go to
Yeah.
Daytona. All
And
right.
so,
And you had an agreement with him, a business agreement of some sort, right? You got part of the winnings and stuff like that.
well, yeah, because the difference in me and a lot of them guys that raced as much as I did was that I had a job.
Yeah. So you had to have a little
I had
help,
a job at U.S. Steel.
right? So
And and I also had a wife and baby,
okay.
wife and daughter
So
that
how,
you knew.
yeah. So this is 1970. I guess the year 1970, probably, right?
Yeah.
All right. So how does your season start out, and how does it go for you? Do you make it to Daytona the first year?
Yeah, and Bobby Ray and them was greener than grass, and they wasn't familiar with things, and they put 44S spark plugs, I believe is what I remember,
Okay.
which is a short track spark plug,
Okay.
not meant for high RPM continuously.
Correct.
So we didn't run, I don't even remember, maybe 20 laps or something like that. but we qualified.
Oh, how did you qualify?
We did qualify good.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly where, but we qualified good. And we were about the only car there that had a 350 in it.
Okay, and this is a 67 and 66, 67 Chevelle?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And everybody else was running 426 Hemis and 427 Fords and 427 Chevrolets,
Yeah.
you know. And
Do you know who the engine builders were back then for you guys, or any idea?
Al Hall.
Oh, okay. Yeah, him and Al were friends for
Yeah, Al was his crew chief.
that for many, many years.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And anyhow, everybody laughed at us when we showed up with a 355. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And
So how does your
what
racing
are,
season?
what are y'all planning on doing with that? you know. But anyhow, we qualified pretty good, and they started paying attention. But
Yeah.
then the spark plugs burn off.
Okay, yeah.
Burnt
Gone.
electrodes slap off the spark plugs.
So you're done.
And I coasted in. They had to change plugs and all of that. I got to get back out there and run.
How was it? How was it going to Daytona? Tell us about coming through the gate at Daytona and getting your opportunity there for the first time. What was that like?
Oh, you know, your heart's pumping.
I guarantee you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You got a pretty good crew with you. Like you said, you got Al Hall with you and a bunch of other good help and stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Al was the type fellow that was a good crew chief, but when it got close to race time, he'd get to shaking.
yeah.
He'd just be so nervous he couldn't hardly stand it. And the last thing the crew chief does as a super speedway, or did then, they'd walk out to your car and check your seat belts and whatever, make sure that your seat belts was fastened and all of that. And so he came out there and he was real nervous, and he'd been having a lot of trouble with his hemorrhoids. And so when he checked my seatbelt and all, he said, "Good luck." And I said, "Well, Al, come here a minute." I got him leaned down to the window, and I said, "Al, regardless what happens to me out there today, I appreciate everything you've ever done for me." And he said, okay. And he turned around and he was making little quick steps, headed back to pit wall.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
I still remember that. That was so funny. I was sitting in the car, them fixing to say, "Start your engine," and I'm sitting in the car laughing like a hyena, you know.
So your season in 1970, when you come back to Birmingham, you start running the short tracks again, right? With the Bobby Ray Jones car.
Yeah.
All right.
That was in 1970.
Yeah. So how does your season go with Bobby Ray?
It went good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We set a track record in Jackson
Okay.
that was still the record when they shut the track down close to 1980.
Wow. That is, yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah.
And the guys said, "Ain't no way you ran that fast." After we qualified,
Right.
Ray Putnam was the one that walked down there, and he said, "Paddlefoot, ain't no way that car ran that fast." And Al Hall
Yeah.
says, "Well, we'll just wait and see." And so sure enough, I won everything they had that night.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they had 3 races. They had a heat race, and they had a match race where they inverted the top 4.
Okay.
So I had to start 4th in that 4-car race,
Wow.
and passed Ray Putnam and all of them and won that one.
Ah, so yeah, you did have a good hot rod. Don't tell you how fast you went, right?
Yeah, and Al Hall went down there and told Ray, said, "Do you believe we ran that fast now?" You know, There's people always picking at each other.
That's right. That's part of it. The rubbing
Yeah.
it in is the fun part. So you have a good career in 1970 with Bobby Ray, but and then at the end of 70, you're getting ready to go back to Daytona, right? You're trying to get you a fresh hot rod for the Daytona 500, right?
For 71.
For
yeah,
70.
for the sportsman race.
For the sportsman race, that's right.
Permatex.
Yeah.
Permatex 200 or 300.
Yeah. Okay.
But
And this is another Chevelle we're building, I guess.
yes.
Okay, another Chevelle. All right.
Yeah.
And we're gonna tighten the body all up, and we're gonna get it all aerodynamic and.
Yeah.
All right.
I got a guy named Clarence Putt to give us perfect body and frame and all when we started building.
Now, where did Clarence? I mean,
He had a junkyard in Prattville.
Oh, okay. All right. So.
But he got me to drive his car one night for him at Montgomery when something happened to mine, and from then on he was my best buddy.
Okay.
you know?
Good. Yeah. So he donates a Chevelle to you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Glenn Shackles,
Yeah.
which I don't know if you ever knew him or not.
I didn't.
He owned Glenn's Uniform Rental. Well, he gave us a brand new motor.
Another small block.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
still
Okay.
in a small block.
All right.
And let me see, old boy Sam Tucker had a body shop on 3rd Avenue, and he would even come out there to the garage and help us a little bit. But he furnished the clutch assembly and the seat and the seat belts and all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
About the only thing Bobby Ray had in the car when we got ready to go, I had everything donated to build that car with the exception of the rear end.
Wow. Okay.
And Bobby Ray, that was Bobby Ray's rear end that he had in there.
Now I'm gonna stop you for a second. And so part of your agreement also with Bobby Ray is that you get the points fund money at the end of the year, correct?
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
Oh, I got to. Yeah, this is the best part of the whole story. So
Well, what it was, the first year I drove for him, I got 20% of the winnings, which wasn't nowhere near enough to cover the shifts I was missing at U.S. Steel
right.
or TCI at that time. But anyhow, and I got to keep all of the points money
Okay.
for the year.
Yeah.
And that would help make up for all them shifts I lost.
And for people that don't know or that do know that was around Bobby Ray, if even to the end of his career, if you brought a part or a car or a piece or anything to that shop, it became Bobby Ray's part. That's just the way it was, and everybody still laughs about that to this day. So you get your points money.
Yeah.
All right.
And we was almost through. Was almost ready to.
But you carry this points money check to the shop that night.
Yeah, we're almost through with the car for
Okay.
Daytona,
All right.
and I go to the garage to help everybody finish up on this car because we're gonna be in Daytona in another 2 weeks.
Yeah. Right. And you got
So-
this check with you, telling everybody
And
about
I
it.
had this check.
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, I got my point money. I got my point money," and it was $700 and something.
Okay.
And so everybody said, "Hey, well, good. You got it, yeah." And so then Bob Ray called me over to the side in a little while and said, "I don't think we're going to be able to make it go to Daytona." And I said, "Do what?" And he said, "Well, to tell you the truth, I can't afford them boys' motel bill."
Yeah.
He said, "If you'll pay their motel bill, if you'll pay the crew's motel bill, we'll go."
So
Well, I done had everybody donate everything on that car. We had to go,
yeah, wasn't no choice.
or they'd have killed me. All them people that donated stuff.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we go. That's kind of a bad thing. But
So how do we run when we get to Daytona? How do we run?
oh, no, we run good.
Yeah.
And I got to learn a lot about drafting.
Yeah.
See, back then, Ken, the cars were so boxy until you could get 5 6 car lengths behind the car,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, you could watch your tack start going up. You would be in the envelope in the hole he was knocking in the air, way back behind him.
Mm-hmm.
You'd you'd feel it start picking up. You'd watch your RPMs go up, and all of a sudden, by the time you got faster and faster when you was heading towards him, because you wasn't pushing nowhere.
That's right. Yeah.
And you waited till you got right close to him, and then you whooped out, and you just shot around him.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to learn all of that kind of stuff.
Did you race that year with anybody? You remember anybody that went on to make it really big?
No, I was trying to think of the guy's name. It was from New York, and I think he was from New York, and I was drafting him, and it was about all I could do to stay up with him without trying to pass him.
Right.
And I was letting him suck me on around there so I could stay up with all of them cubic inches.
That's right.
And so I was using him to let my little 355 run as fast as he was running.
Right.
And he dumped an engine in 3 and 4.
Take you with him?
He went like a helicopter blade, and I was the second helicopter blade right behind him.
Yeah.
And then come down off track. Nobody hit me, but every time my driver's side door faced the traffic, I want to scrooch over. I just knew somebody go hit me in the driver's side door.
Yeah.
You know, that's how Friday Hassler got killed.
Yes, that's right.
But anyhow, come into the pits, and they changed the tires and all of that. But we didn't have radios and stuff back then. Everything was done on a pit board.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And when you're going through the trioval at Daytona, daggum, you're a block and a half away from pit road over there.
Yeah.
And everybody's got the same pit board.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So we had found some fluorescent feet print.
Okay.
About 4 or 5 inches high. And we'd put them on all 4 corners of my pit board so I could pick mine out from the other 40
okay,
that's
right.
out there, you know. And but anyhow, come in there and they changed tires. We went on about our business, but I've still got that pit board.
Have you really? No kidding.
It's in my garage at my house right now. That same pit board and all them feet print stickers that
really
was on our decal.
Oh, that's
stickers. Some of the toes just fell off and stuff,
right.
but I still got that.
That's a
pit
great
board.
keepsake right there.
Yeah, I might have to give that to your brother.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because he said he was putting memorabilia up in his business.
Okay, yeah, may very well. Yeah, okay. Well, good. So you get back from Daytona.
Yeah.
And y'all start the 71 season, short track racing again.
Yeah, and it didn't last long after that because I was...
Get your feelings hurt?
I was pretty ill about him getting my point money.
Yeah, I understand.
So that didn't last very long.
Something worse happened a little later than that, though, didn't it? Than the points money? The car, something happened with the car? Did Chevelle get sold?
Oh, he sold that car to Bobby Allison for a short track car.
Oh.
Yeah, we never raced that car again.
So
when we got back, Bobby Ray sold that car to Bobby, for Bobby a short track car.
Okay, yeah.
And all of my buddies has donated all that thousands of dollars to build that car, and even the car itself.
Yeah.
They wasn't too happy. But
So
it went by the wayside.
all right. So you're not real happy with the situation, and so where do you go drive from there?
To tell you the truth, I'm trying to think. I can't remember who I started driving for then.
Some of the people out of Nashville, you'd met
I
some-
drove for Ed Benward out of Nashville. I drove. I drove that WBHP radio car out of Huntsville.
Okay.
I drove it. That might have been when I went to driving it. Drove it for a year or more.
Okay. Yeah.
And then,
Had good success in those cars? Yeah.
well, it wasn't the best in the world, but you
Yeah.
know we could hold our own. It
That's
wasn't
right.
like we dominated
Right. Yeah.
nobody. We was thrilled to death to win a race when we did. It wasn't like we was winning every week or
Sure.
nothing like that. No.
So you had a good career in Nashville. You met a lot of good people up there in Nashville.
Well, Tommy Cowell, him and his daddy had a car that I drove, and they were the nicest people in the world. They even, in the attic of the house, they made it living area, so me and my wife and my daughter
Yeah.
could spend the night with them before we drove back to Birmingham the next
Yeah.
day. And that was, you know, if we didn't carry the airplane.
That's right. Yeah.
And if we carried the airplane, well, we'd generally go and spend the night with them, and then Tommy would carry us to the airport,
And then take off the next morning and go home.
and we'd come home.
Yeah.
And and we was on the way home one morning, and the FAA had told us everything's clear to Birmingham.
Mhm.
We up there, and all of a sudden, it gets where I can't see my wingtips,
Uh-oh.
or nothing but my wingtips. So I get on the radio, and he said, "Yeah," I said, "that front moved in from the west quicker than we anticipated, and it might be best you turn around, put it on heading so and so, and altitude so and so, and come back to Nashville."
Mm.
Okay. Here we go. We're going back, and my wife's sitting in the passenger seat over here, and all of a sudden she about jumps in my lap and hollered. Well, it scared me half out of my mind. I knew we ought to be getting close to Nashville,
Right.
but we couldn't see nothing. It
Uh-huh.
was, I mean, you couldn't see the ground. You couldn't see nothing but the wingtips. And it was a building.
Whoa.
It was a building about maybe 30 yards off to the side, and we barely missed that skyscraper building in Nashville.
Wow.
And so I just firewalled it and pulled back as much as I could pull back without stalling,
Yeah.
because we would went in the ground
Sure.
then.
Yeah.
So as soon as I got up where I knew there was nothing up that high, well, I got on the radio and I called the tower man back
Yeah.
and told him, "Didn't you tell me to fly on such and such a heading?" "Yes, sir, I did." "Such and such altitude?" "Yes, sir, I did." I said, "Well, my wife just looked up a woman's dress in an office building."
Oh my goodness.
And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know y'all made it that far back.
Oh.
I won't get off radio until I get you on the ground."
Wow.
So he stayed on the radio with me and got me lined up, and I landed the plane, tied it up. And Tommy Cowell came back over there in his Monte Carlo
Yeah.
and picked us up and drove us to Pleasant Grove, back
Did he?
to home down here.
Wow.
But they were nicest people in the world.
Did you ever run for the track championship or anything in Nashville, or did you just make the big races most of the time?
No, I never did.
Yeah. That's the neatest racetrack I think that there is.
Well, see, it was 3 different racetracks. The first year when I was driving for Joe Antonora, well, you went down a straightaway, you went up a hill,
Wow.
a real sharp turn, down a hill, and hit straightaway. Well, there's 110 cars showed up there for the big race at the end of the year.
Is that when y'all used to have to cut holes in your roof to be able to see through the corners?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Wow.
But no, that was the other one.
Okay, I got you.
All right. Then Red told me he said, there's so many cars here. He said, you ain't never drove this track. He said, you follow me on
Talking about Red Farmer, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, he took me under his wing, or I never would have made it anywhere near as far as I did make it. I didn't go far as I wanted to, but only reason I made it as far as I did was because Red took me under his wing and helped me so much.
Yeah.
But he wanted me to follow him. And he said, now look, when we go in that corner, our front end is going to push up to the guardrail. And he said, right before it hits that guardrail, I'm going to stand in it. And he said, it'll just snap that front end right off that guardrail.
Whoa.
And I said, Red, man, that don't sound right. He said, no. And it don't sound right to all these other people either.
Yeah, right.
If you plan on making this race, you do what I tell you.
Wow.
I said, okay. So I followed him around there, and my heart's in my throat, you know, get up there 3 foot off the wall.
And you're driving for Joe, you think, at this time?
Joanne Nora.
Okay, you're driving Joe's car. Okay, all right.
My first time to ever see Nashville.
Oh, okay. Wow.
That's the reason that Red is having to tell me.
I got you. Okay.
And I had never even seen it. That was the first time we ever had to wear a fire suit.
Okay.
The very first race.
Okay. Wow.
But anyhow, I wound up qualifying in the teams and out of 110 cars. And to tell you how tough it was, Alton, Burger Jones, he didn't even make it.
Wow. That's saying a lot.
So he came over there, and he was right up at the top in national points. And of course, I wasn't, because I didn't start driving at the first of '69.
Right.
So he asked me, would it be all right if he started my car, and then we'd change drivers when it was time to make.
Because he needed to gain the points.
Because whoever started the car would get the national points.
Okay.
And they meant nothing to me.
Right.
And he had helped me get the ride with Howard Gaither.
Did he? Okay.
See, he's the one that told them you ought to get Paddlefoot to drive your car.
Okay.
And if he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have never won them races.
Yeah.
And NASCAR would have never moved me to late model sportsman. I would have been out of racing.
That's right. Yeah.
So Burger, I owed him anyhow.
Yeah.
So I told him it'd be fine with me if it was all right with Joe. And me and him went and talked to Joe, and Joe said, yeah, that'd be fine, because he knew Alton was
Jones.
Super good driver.
Ain't no doubt about it.
And so anyhow, that's.
How'd he run in the race? Do you remember?
We decided that he was going to drive the whole race before the race ever started.
Okay.
We weren't going to swap drivers.
Okay.
Because Burger was at least twice my size.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know, back in them days, it sounds funny now, but at the end of the year, which was last September, 1st October, well, I'd be down to 110 pounds, something like that. And my wife would almost force feed me. She'd fatten me up during the 3 months, you know.
Yeah, to what, 120 pounds?
I'd get up to about 130 or 32.
Oh, yeah, you did gain.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And then at the end of the next year, I back to 110 or 12. But
I remember one time you told me we were talking about your weight, and you told me you had to run around in the shower just to get wet.
Yeah. I've done that before. Yeah, everybody kidded me all the time.
Yeah. So how does he finish in the race? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Okay. But if the car was capable.
He didn't win it.
Sure.
If he'd have won it, I remember.
Absolutely right.
He didn't win it, but I think he run real well.
Yeah. Some of the good relationships and stuff. I know the stories that you tell me about Marty Robbins are very special, because I've always been a big Marty Robbins fan, and it seems like the stories you tell me even make me a bigger Marty Robbins fan. So
yeah.
Tell me about your relationship with Marty.
Well, he was just one of the nicest people you ever saw.
Yeah.
We would be out of town somewhere, and after the races was over, well, they would be good-looking women come up, I mean, dressed like they wasn't going to a race. You
That's
understand
right,
what
yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah, they're dressed really nice.
And they'd come up to him and this, hey, I thought me and you might go somewhere tonight or something like that. And he'd say, I'd love to, but I've already made plans.
Wow.
And they might be two of them same night, you know,
right.
come up, you know, but he never take them up on it. And then we would leave the track, go back to the motel.
Yeah.
And he drove an old four-door Lincoln Town car. That thing was 20 feet long, you know,
Uh-huh.
and the trunk about 6 feet long. And he'd pop the trunk and get out his guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd say, let's go get out of these driving suits and go to the pool.
Yeah.
So we'd run in the motel room, put on our regular clothes, walk out the pool. Back then, they didn't close the pools at 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd start playing music. Well, people would say, gosh,
Yeah.
that sounds like Marty Robbins. And so people would start coming out of rooms and stuff like that. And he enjoyed it so much, he would do all his singing and stuff for free when he could be making money doing it.
Sure, yeah.
And he'd say, he'd get through with a song and he'd say, okay, now what do you want to hear? And he'd point at different people.
Yeah, right.
And they'd tell him, and he'd go into it and sing it, you know. And I'd finally give up 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd go back to my room and go to bed. You
Right,
know?
yeah.
But he just loved entertaining people that much.
What about I think there was a couple of times in restaurants people would come up and
Oh, yeah.
Share that story with everybody.
Well, one time, and it was in Jackson, Mississippi this time, when we went to a restaurant after the race was over, and we were sitting at this pretty large table, and a waitress came over and we ordered what we wanted to eat. And so we was chatting, and a guy that was sitting with a woman and a young girl
Mm-hmm.
came over to our table, and he walked up to Marty and he said, my wife said, you sure do look like Marty Robbins. Said, are you Marty Robbins? And I learned my PR from him.
Yeah.
Because he said, yes, sir, I sure am. Stuck his hand out.
Wow.
And said, what's your name?
Wow.
And the guy told him his name, you know, looked a little shocked. He told him his name, and Marty said, well, what do you do for a living?
Wow. Never expected a welcome like that, did he?
Yeah. And the guy was just standing there amazed, and Marty says, is that your wife and daughter over there? She said, yeah. He said, well, go over and get them and bring them over here to the table with us.
Wow.
And so he did.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's sitting on my left here, and he's chatting with them, you know, and they're thrilled to death getting to sit with Marty Robbins. And so the waitress comes back with our food, and she sits mine and his down in front of us. But he was sitting to my left, and he had turned his chair to where his back was facing me.
Right.
And so he just kept chatting with them there on the end of the table. And in a minute, well, I tapped him on the shoulder, and he turned around and he said, yeah. I said, your food's here. And he said, Paddlefoot, I can eat anytime, but I can't talk to nice people like this just anytime.
Wow, isn't that something? That's special.
But that's the way he thought of his fans, you know.
Yeah.
And him, every time we be somewhere and somebody say, meet him, you know.
Yeah.
And he'd say, well, what do you do for a living?
Wow. How about
Well,
that?
where do you live?
Yeah.
Well, who do you work for?
Really?
He asked that guy all those questions, that same guy that night. He
Wow.
asked him all them questions.
Wow.
But he wanted to know everything he could about you and you're
Thinking,
you're surprised that
Sure.
he'd be interested in you.
yeah, it's an amazing story.
And
Yeah.
so I've used that thousands of times up there. I go to the Talladega
Yeah. At the-
Museum for
Yeah.
the Alabama Auto Racing Pioneers
Every year, yeah, for Talladega.
and I go to the room and stay Thursday and Friday and a half a day Saturday every race week,
Right,
and meet and greet people
right,
that comes through our room with our displays
Right.
and all of that. And I use old Marty a bunch.
You know, that's the cool part about it, because every one of them are getting a little bit of Marty Robbins and don't even know it.
That's right.
You know, and that's about as cool as it gets for somebody
right.
to have an impression on you like
He
that.
taught me.
Yeah, just
He
by
taught
watching.
me that PR,
Yeah,
and you'll be surprised at how surprised they are that you'd be interested in them.
that's right. It
And
is.
see, I talk to people from Germany,
Wow, all
hell,
over.
all over the world.
Share with us the day that you got the news that Marty Robbins had passed away. We lost him.
Well, tell you the truth, I was in a nightclub.
Is that right?
I was in Sunny Duke's up here in Birmingham. I just came from a business meeting.
Mhm.
Had a boy named Johnny Moman with me,
Right.
and me and him had been to a business meeting, and we sat there and drank the beer or so, and Marty had came to Sunny Duke's.
Wow.
He would come there and put on shows
Yeah.
because he knew that Bobby and Donnie and
Yeah.
everybody, all his racing buddies down here would bring our wives,
Yeah.
and he'd have them set up a big old table and sit 20 couples
Right.
right in front of the stage,
Wow.
and he'd come put on shows there. Well, and he'd do it mostly because of us.
Right.
And so, anyhow, we
Got the news that night.
got the news. Me and Bowman sitting there, and Sonny Duke walked out on the stage, got on the loudspeaker, and he said, "I got some sad news."
Hmm.
Said, Marty Robbins just passed away.
Wow.
So, naturally, that didn't sit well with me. So, I told Johnny, I said, "I'm ready to go."
Hmm.
You know, it was like probably 9 o'clock at night. We
Right.
just stopped by there and drank a beer or two before we went back to Pleasant Grove.
Yeah.
I said, "I'm ready to go." And he said, "I can understand that." So we left, and on the way back to Fairfield, we didn't have the freeway,
Mhm.
or didn't go to the freeway. We just headed into Fairfield, and there was a closed down service station. I pulled over in that service station. I said, "You make fun of me if you want to, but I'm going to sit here for a minute."
Wow.
And I did cry.
Wow.
I sure did. I cried. That was just, man, that just cost the world such a good person,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. You know, he had heart problems, you know, and
Yeah.
had several heart attacks and
Yeah,
things like that. And
that's what got him.
finally got him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Uh,
yeah, you don't get many people to make impressions in your life like that, especially people
Uh-uh.
of that magnitude, you know.
well, you see a nobody like me
Right.
being around a somebody like him,
Yeah.
and he treats you like he does himself,
That's right.
then you've got to like somebody
Right,
like that.
absolutely.
It makes you feel special
Oh, absolutely.
just to get to watch him and see what he does. you
Yeah, and I know several people that knew Marty or worked with Marty or whatever. Don Meadows, I know for a fact that through the years that he worked for Marty, and when Marty would be traveling back through town and stuff, he'd stop and pick Don up, and they would travel together and
Yeah.
and stuff. You know, when he made a friendship with you, he really took care of it and
Yeah.
he made it very special, like you said, for a long time.
Yeah, and he made you feel special
Yeah.
too. You know, you didn't feel like he was up on top of the stairs and just down there at the bottom,
Right.
just hanging around with him. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
he
So-
made you feel like he was on the same level with you. You know,
Yeah. So your racing career ended in about 1978.
yeah.
And-
It got where money money was controlling every doggone thing. And
I thought that just started in the late 2000s. I didn't know it started way
yeah,
back then.
yeah, yeah, it still holds true today too. But yeah, I just got really aggravated.
Yeah.
And I up and quit, and like I went crazy.
Yeah. And then you had a comeback career.
Well, trying to think of Bobby's last name now. Bobby Jackson. Bobby Jackson called me 10 years later,
Wow.
and I was running Performance Marine
Yeah.
boat dealership.
Yeah.
And so he said, I want you to come drive my race car. I was like, what do you got? I've got an all-pro modified 4.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I said, I ain't never drove one of them. And he said, I said, to tell you the truth, it might scare me to death sit down in one now. And he said, I don't think it would. He said, I'll get it okay with the people at Say Reef if you'll agree to come out there at 2 o'clock on Saturday.
Okay.
I'll get them to open the gates and let me and you carry the car in, and you make some laps, and you decide whether you still want to drive one or not.
Okay. Now, who is Bobby at this time? Do you know? You've known
Bobby
him?
Jackson.
Yeah. Tell me about Bobby.
He was building chassis for Bobby Ray Jones.
Oh, okay.
When after Bobby Ray it got to be big,
Okay.
and on BRJ Racing,
Okay. All right.
and Bobby was building chassis for him, so he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I went out there and met him at Say Reef, and the chassis and all had come so far from 77
Yeah.
to 87.
But I think there's a tubular chassis on this car, wasn't it? Pretty much, or
I don't remember.
okay. But yeah, it was a race car. And I remember I was your neighbor at that time, and I remember going to the races with you, and it was definitely a race car.
But that thing, I drove it a few laps. It was like driving a go-kart.
Wow.
You didn't have to drive it by the seat of your pants, like I'd always been used to doing.
Sure.
You could just unscrew your head and let your conscience be your guide. You just buried in the corner.
Yeah, I'd take it.
And I knew it would take it, but I was leery of it at first. It got faster and faster and faster and faster. And so that night I wound up setting a track record.
Wow.
For
Yeah.
all pro modified 4s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. When? How long did you drive that car?
Turned up 1332
Wow.
with a 4-cylinder.
Wow.
And Mike Harmon turned the fastest in the V8s.
Right. Late models.
And he turned a 1305.
Wow. So yeah, you were right there in them.
So I was right there at him, and because he's my cousin.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How's this?
Well, my mother and his grandmother were sisters.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
That's
a little trivia for everybody. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But anyhow, I told them before the races started that night at Sayre, I told them at the driver's meeting,
Mm-hmm.
I asked them, would it be all right if I started on the back of the late models?
Did you?
And I said, and some of them started saying, no, heck no, no.
Yeah, right.
We don't want you out there, because I was running a lot faster than them. So
Yeah.
anyhow, with a little 4-cylinder car.
Yeah.
But anyhow, Mike Harmon spoke up and he said, you bunch of wusses. He says,
So did you end up running with them?
no, I didn't let me run.
I got you. So,
But
How long did you race this car? Tell me about.
Well, I told him that I was running Performance Marine, and that was a pretty much full-time job, and I wasn't going to run weekly shows.
Yeah.
But if he wanted me to drive it just in the big shows, you know, like Miller American race or mid-season championship race and all of this, the big races, well, I'd drive them. I'd drive it for him. He said, that suits me. It'll be less I have to work on it.
Right, yeah.
And so I ran it 8 races that year and won 6 out of 8 of the big races.
Wow.
And set, I'd break my own track record.
Wow, how about that? Yeah.
But anyhow, it was just a super nice, fast car.
Did that only last 1 year? Did it last just 1 year?
The first race of the next year was Coca-Cola Classic at BIR.
All right.
All right. After we went up there, and I set another track record for BIR, and turned a 2092 with a 4-cylinder, and won that race. Even slowed down and motioned the second place guy to go to the inside of me, and me and him run side by side the last 10 laps, and I ran the outside all the time.
Did you? Yeah.
And then I got scared with about a lap to go. I got to thinking, what if he's playing possum and I lose his race? But and I showered down on it. I beat him, 6 or 8 car lengths or something on that last lap. But because I wouldn't want to go back to the pits if I'd lost that race.
I guarantee you. Yeah.
But I had a barrel of fun with that. And then Bobby called me a couple of weeks after that. He said him and his mother were having, him and his wife were having problems about that race car. And he said, I'm going to sell it. The fellow in Tennessee wants to buy it. And gosh, I done got boat sponsors and everything for it.
You're ready.
So I told him okay.
Yeah.
And then a lot of other people that own all pro modifieds,
right?
They started calling me, drive my car, drive my car. And I told them no.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to tell you a little story. I said, the first time I quit racing, well, it hurt me so bad until I'd lay in bed at night and that's all I could do to keep from crying.
Wow, yeah.
I said, it just killed me to have to quit when I was
in your prime.
When I had been in the top 10 in NASCAR with 3,300 drivers in the United States and late model sportsmen.
That's right.
And me finished in the top 10 drivers.
Yes.
And then dropped down to where I was a nobody.
Yeah.
And ticked off and quit,
Yep.
And I said, Lord knew how bad that hurt me. And in my mind, I think that the good Lord gave me this opportunity to come back to racing and finish on top.
You're on top of your game. That's right.
Wound up winning 7 out of 9.
Yeah.
Counting that Coca-Cola Classic. And the other 2, I wrecked in one and I blew the head gasket in the other. Or I'd have won them too.
Wow.
But anyhow, I said, Lord gave me an opportunity to quit on top this time, and I'm going to take him up on it.
Yeah, that's the end of your career.
Because he knew how bad it hurt me to quit while I was a nobody
the
first time. But I tell you, racing always meant a lot to me. Made so many friends.
Yeah.
And people I think the world of right today, the ones that's left.
That's correct.
You know, I'm to the age now to where there's not many of us left,
Yeah.
That.
Well, you have had a good life. You've had a good life, good career. I know you've had some challenges in your life and things to overcome, but, like you said, you made many good friends, and you've been a good friend to many, and it's...
I've tried to be.
You have, and you've been a good friend to me through the years, and I can't tell you enough. Like I said earlier, you were one of the first ones that I wanted to reach out to share this podcast with, and I thank you again for coming and taking your time today. And
Well, I've enjoyed it. You made me jog my memory.
well, that's what it's all about. And but I wanted to.
I'm just glad that I didn't run out of tomorrows until I got here.
Yeah, that's true too. Right?
That's what I say instead of saying I'm glad I didn't die.
That's right. Exactly.
I'm glad I ain't run out of tomorrows.
Right. So everybody, Paddlefoot's podcast will be released within the next 2 weeks or so. So when you listen to it and you like it, please hit that like button and subscribe. Paddlefoot, it's an honor and a privilege for me to have you come in today, and I want to
Well,
again
it was
thank you.
for me too.
Yeah.
And, I've enjoyed you bringing up stuff to make me go back and remember it.
Well, you were a big part of automobile racing in this era and this time, and you deserve to be heard. And again, your stories mean a lot to not only me but to a lot of people.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm the one that's blessed.
Well, I think we all are, aren't we?
Oh yes, we most certainly are.
Yeah.
I realize it more every day.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, August I'll be that big number.
Really?
Yeah.
What number is that? 83.
3.
Yeah, that's a good number.
Yeah, and I still get around good.
Yeah, you do.
I
Yeah.
can outrun a snake if it gets after me and stuff like that.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in today, and again, we appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Rings, Gears, and Opinions. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. We'll have a new show out for you next Tuesday. We hope to see you there.